At the Circuit de Barcelona-Catalunya, the most important regulatory change of the year becomes a reality. The FIA enforces a crackdown on front-wing deformation checks, requiring an increase in minimum stiffness between 30% and 66% depending on the type of flex. This affects not only straight-line performance but also the balance between high and low-speed sections, demanding adaptation from both teams and drivers. The first consequence of the new tests concerns aerodynamic efficiency. Stiffer wings will maintain a higher angle of attack on straights, generating more aerodynamic drag and thus greater resistance. However, monitoring top speeds at the end of straights will not be enough to quantify the technical directive's impact on individual cars. Often, teams that best exploited wing flexibility used it to run higher downforce setups, gaining cornering performance without paying a steep price in straight-line speed. This also helped over race distance, using the extra downforce to better manage tire wear. Over the past year, more and more insiders have identified McLaren as the team most adept at exploiting front-wing flex, raising the bar for everyone and forcing rivals to catch up. However, it is not a given that the Woking-based team will be the one most affected by the regulation change. Much will depend on how well they adapt to the updated tests, since even redesigned wings will still retain a certain level of flexibility. What will make the difference is the ability to comply with the new stiffness criteria while still achieving a reasonable degree of deformation in motion, taking advantage of the fact that technical inspections cannot accurately replicate the real-world load distribution on the wing. Furthermore, the directive does not just target wing flex, it also impacts other areas of the car, which teams and drivers might experience in different ways. The impact on balance will be crucial, as one of the biggest challenges with ground-effect Formula One cars is achieving consistent balance across the full speed range, from 300 to 50 km per hour. Wing deformation is a valuable tool to achieve this. Flexing the wing reduces front-end downforce in high-speed corners, preventing the rear from becoming too light and the car from being overly sharp and unstable. At lower speeds, restoring maximum wing angle helps counter understeer in tight corners, offering flexibility to adjust balance across different types of turns. These dynamics make it very difficult to estimate the impact of the new tests on individual teams. Balance is an area where effects cascade, from driver confidence to maintaining tires in their optimal operating window, preventing sliding and overheating. The response to the technical directive will therefore depend not just on the wings, but on the overall characteristics of each car. In this context, each car's balance window becomes highly significant. Cars with a more stable rear end have the potential to adapt better, using the abundance of rear downforce to compensate for a front end that becomes more aggressive in fast sections. So far, McLaren has shown strong rear-end stability, evident also in their excellent rear tire management, similar to a much-improved Mercedes in that regard. Conversely, Ferrari and Red Bull have appeared more front-focused, and must now be careful not to become too unbalanced as a result of the directive. Many factors come into play, including the internal and external suspension geometries. A very stiff suspension setup helps maintain ride height and keep the floor close to the ground, maximizing aerodynamic downforce. However, it can also create issues when rebalancing the car, as the limited internal mechanical movement reduces the effectiveness of spring damper adjustments in correcting the balance. The Spanish Grand Prix weekend therefore promises a very busy Friday for teams, which will be forced to adjust setups to preserve balance. Ferrari team principal Frédéric Vasseur has already announced that the Maranello team will not bring any updates besides the new front wing, preferring to focus on setup work without introducing further development-related variables. Ferrari is also the team most convinced that the technical directive could reset the performance order for everyone, a view Toto Wolff attempted to explain. The Mercedes team principal suggested that Ferrari had likely been the most conservative regarding flexible wings and said it remained uncertain whether the new rules would affect the hierarchy, expressing doubt that they would. The impact of the new rules will also depend on driver preferences. The change will benefit those most adept at managing a sharp front end and dealing with high-speed oversteer, with Max Verstappen the top example of this skill, and Charles Leclerc and Lando Norris not far behind. However, not everyone can say the same, and among those most at risk is Lewis Hamilton, who has already struggled with confidence in the SF25 single-seater at high speed throughout the first part of the 2025 Formula One season. A revolution in Spain is unlikely, but it is hard to imagine that the new technical checks will be without consequence, especially in a Formula One season as closely contested as this one, where a few hundredths can make all the difference. The Spanish Grand Prix is finally here, and it will reveal the impact of the FIA's regulation that significantly reduces front-wing flexibility through more stringent static checks. The measure had been decided shortly before the season opener in Australia, where a similar rule was introduced concerning rear wings, and teams have had plenty of time to prepare for this step backward. The decision, made in agreement with the teams, to delay the introduction of the new rule, had financial reasoning tied to the budget cap. Teams are heavily engaged in designing the 2026 Formula One cars, and it made sense to implement the regulatory change mid-season, when most development plans included a front-wing upgrade. Many think that the deflection mainly involves the two flaps that visibly bend on TV, while aerodynamicists have identified programmed deformations affecting the main profile, the second element, and even the end plate. Thinking along these lines, it's easier to imagine that engineers have had enough time to study solutions to offset the front wing's performance loss. The rule itself is very simple. The FIA reduces the allowed static deflection of the wing, measured with a force of 100 Newton, from 15 mm to 10 mm. The load is applied 800 mm from the car's centerline. In theory, this demands a 30% increase in stiffness, but in practice the movement must not exceed 10 mm at a specific point. However, if teams can design more complex deformations that still pass the technical checks, the wing would be perfectly legal. The flexible wing is valuable because it provides maximum aerodynamic load at low speeds, while at high-speed sections it deflects to reduce drag, allowing for higher top speeds. It is a compelling topic. We will just have to wait until Friday practice to get the first answers and find out who might need to spend more resources to catch up. Ferrari team principal Fred Vasseur has made his initial comments ahead of the Barcelona Grand Prix. Fred Vasseur has clear objectives but also emphasized that the new technical directive should not be underestimated. Barcelona, according to some team principals, including Fred Vasseur, could be a turning point race. The impact of this new directive on the championship could be substantial enough to reopen the title fight, and Ferrari is placing a lot of hope on this race weekend. Ferrari arrives in Barcelona with confidence following the strong result in Monaco and a renewed competitiveness in qualifying. Fred Vasseur noted that the Spanish Grand Prix marks the beginning of the second third of the season, and emphasized that Barcelona is a well-known circuit for both teams and drivers. The French manager highlighted the momentum from the last two positive races, adding that progress had also been made in qualifying in Monaco. The path Ferrari has taken appears to be delivering the expected results, and Fred Vasseur made it clear that the objective for the weekend is to continue moving in that direction. Whether Ferrari will benefit remains to be seen, as teams will only begin gathering answers during Friday's free practice sessions, where data collection and direct comparisons with rivals will take place. Vasseur acknowledged that more stringent static tests on front-wing flexibility would debut in Barcelona, and noted that this would be an important factor to consider.